Hello, I'm Robert Toomey. I'm a research developer at the National Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma. This is a tutorial showing how to use the RAPIO Builder to build RAPIO. Currently, we mostly support CentOS Linux, but I have built RAPIO successfully within the current Amazon Linux as well. We have a direct build script package, and also indirectly, we've been starting to add container definitions for making container images. So let's get started. Basically, the first thing you need to do is check out the RAPIO Builder repo. This contains scripts to build a unique folder environment with all the critical third-party we use. The reason we build these is because patching or version changes can affect real-time operations. If we're using netcdf of a particular version, we don't want the RPM being updated to a newer version without a lot of testing first. Also, we use some custom flags for various packages for added ability and optimization. So, to check out, let's start with a computer here. I'm logged into a machine at the lab, but it doesn't really matter. It could be any CentOS. So if we do Etsy Red Hat release, all right. I'm on a CentOS 8 machine right now. So basically the first thing to do to check out is I need Git, obviously. So git clone. I'm going to do it, github.com. And this is just where the, RAPIO Builder. And you'll see when you do a git clone, you're cloning it out. Now this is accessed from anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the lab to actually do the git checkout. So now I have a copy of RAPIO Builder. So just a quick side note before we build, let me show you the container packages and the scripts for RPM installation on a raw system. If you have root on your machine, you can run this to check that you have the basic RPMs installed. I use these scripts to set up a Podman Docker container, so it might be helpful on a base system. So in the container subfolder, you'll see a bunch of scripts. These scripts are all for actually building different containers with different levels of the software. But I'm going to go into, I think it's packages. And if you do just RAPIO CentOS 8, for instance, in this case. Oops. You notice I have a bunch of the DNF install. So basically, here you go, like the core utilities, Git, Python. I think I was using Python 2 for a while, but it works in Python 3 now, so it's not really needed. But basically, you can run that for the RAPIO, and then if you want to do the MRMS, there's the AUGS CentOS 8, and it just basically installs everything RAPIO requires, and also it does the add algorithms one. So you can run the MRMS, add AUGS, and each of these is layered. So this is just the special RPMs that are needed just for MRMS. And then there's even one for the if you're going to do the GUI, if you want to actually build through WG, then you can actually each of these layers. So you've also got this, and this is all the fancy stuff. We have to use a different repo in order to install the WG GUI in CentOS 8. So you can see they kind of layer on each other, so you can run this. It'll give you the DNF packages. But I've already done that. This machine's set up with all the packages it requires. So let's do the actual build. So to actually do a build, there's two ways. One is just building the third party in RAPIO. This way is meant for outside the lab if you're working on a new algorithm that maybe later on you want to optionally put in MRMS. The second way is pretty much the same, except you have access to the proprietary MRMS code repositories, which include Woodsy and HMIT among other projects. So if I were building just RAPIO, I would do build, and I would do rapio.cfg. Let's make sure that works. Okay, it brings up a menu, and it's asking me where to put it, but I'm not going to do that because I'm actually in the lab, so I can do build, and I can run the MRMS config instead, and this will build everything in GUI. Now I've got turned off the display. I don't have the, it's trying to build the WG GUI, but it doesn't have the RPMs for that. I didn't run the package for installing the GUI, so we're not going to build that here. But if I do, I can just pick 3. I can do relative. So basically I'm going to build an RMS build for today. Now, since I'm in the lab, it's going to ask me my username and password. So I'm going to put that in. And you'll notice that it's doing an SVN checkout because our repo currently for our MRMS stuff is using SVN still. This will also do a git checkout of the RAPIO repo and build it as well. So we'll let that go for a bit. That'll take a few minutes to run, and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so those of you who have done an MRMS build in the past know that took just about 20 seconds or so. So now the build is complete and everything built. If it builds correctly, you'll get this final list of the settings that were used to make this particular build. So I'm going to clear this out. Now there are two ways of building a RAPIO algorithm. So let me go to where that build was and see there's a folder that I picked when I first started the build. So if you look inside the build folder, you get your bin, your config, etc., include, lib, all that. The only difference between this and a non-RAPIO build or a regular RAPIO build is that you have the HMET folder and the Woodsy folder. So if you go into RAPIO, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the example, the R example folder. So in here, this is basically the test algorithm that I write just to kind of show what's going on. So I just ran it. There's all the options showing up, and you've got your code. You know, we can even look at one if we want real quick. And there's just an algorithm example here showing basic options. And I try to document this example as much as possible to show you how to do it. I mean, obviously we're going to need a wiki page or something that's got more detail probably for things. But for instance, like I show how to do options under the declare option function for your algorithm, and I've got everything commented out in this example. But then you have the process options, which is where you grab your options to put into local variables, and then you have your process new data where you get the data. I think the current example is actually reading group2 data, so it's set up to read a group2 data index and just dump the index and do that. So this example algorithm gets updated as over time as RAPIO's API will change and develop. So that's a good place to look if you're just trying to get a basic idea of how to set up an algorithm. I'm going to look at the makefile.am here. So right now this is a little bit messy. I want to clean this up a little bit, but I've got all the includes and everything for building and linking. So the C flags, you've got the include because it has to go off the build location and all that. I'm not an M4 guru, so that's something it needs to be cleaned up. But that's really not the main purpose. That's the first way of building a RAPIO algorithm. The second way, the way that I'm really interested in it right now, is adding a new algorithm to MRMS, which is the main purpose of RAPIO at the moment. So let's take a look and go through that process just to show you how it works. So I have a tar.ggs here, so I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna put this into my MRMS Woodsy. I'm gonna go w2 algs. Put it in there. So I'm going to go into that directory now. So this is so I've got there's all the Woods 2 algorithms. So I've got a test algorithm ready to go. So I'm going to uncompress this. All right. So basically what I've got in here is I've got my basic algorithm headers and all that. But the difference is, and I probably need to put this on the RAPIO Builder page, but this is the important thing, is that with our M4, I've at least managed so far to get I got C flags and programs and RAPIO libs. I've managed to find these variables. So the key thing to remember is that not every build of MRMS Woodsy has RAPIO. So the first thing you want to do in your makefile is you want to have this if RAPIO def. So I basically have if RAPIO in there, if RAPIO programs, and then down here I have the bin programs. That way, if RAPIO is not built as part of the build, then it won't try to build the algorithm if you're using RAPIO. But hopefully in the future it's a standard thing set up, but right now it's not. So this is kind of the basic format. So there's your sources and your code libraries. That's for your other Woodsy libraries if you're going to link to other things in Woodsy. So the question is, you got a new algorithm here. So how do I build it? So this is something that I see happen a lot with students and grad students that are trying to figure stuff out, is that how do you add a new one, right? So I'm going to go into makefile.am. And the first thing you want to do here is you want to Here, I'll just put it here. You want to actually tell makefile to do a subdirectory. So you want to add that subdirectory, so the W2 RAPIO test. And then to configure autoconf. Okay, you also have where the makefiles are generated. So you also want to put that in here. And since I've just got one simple subfolder, RAPIO test that makefile, this should work. So if your compiler is modern enough, you should just be able to type make and it should auto regenerate when you do that. So we'll try that. Maybe it'll fail. And I'll show you another way to do it if you run into trouble to where it doesn't work or it doesn't build. But if this works, we should actually see it build that subfolder. So it's regenerating on the makefiles, and there it is, our simple alg. So it's really just that simple to add an algorithm to the build. Now, of course, if we're using SVN, you have to go into that folder and do an SVN add. If we're switched to Git, which I'm hoping sometime next year we do, that will actually, everything will be on Git and the scripts and everything we modify for that. So when I go into here, RAPIO test now, see I'm now part of, so I'm going to run this W2 test algorithm. So I run it locally. I can also do a make install, and it'll put it, if I go up, watch this. So I'm going to go up a directory, I'm going to go up to there, and there's the bin folder, right? So let's look in the bin folder, and you'll see there's different algorithms, right? So if I do W2 merger, W2 merger, I don't have it in my path. There's W2 merger, and the W2 test will be in there now. There you go. There's your new algorithm. So now remember, they're different copies. The one in the bin is when you do a make install. The one that's in your actual build folder is the current one that was last made if you didn't do a make install. Okay, another way to do this, let's say this gives you problems, you get errors, it gets confused. Auto make, auto build can get confused sometimes, especially if you start changing things around, adding or removing things from your make file, figure.ac, is that in each of these builds in Woodsy, I put this rebuild.sh script, and this has the autogen command with the flags for the build, for that particular build you made. The big thing is with RAPIO is that you want this, if you don't have this at the end, the dash with RAPIO, then you don't have RAPIO enabled, so your algorithm won't build if it's a RAPIO algorithm. So you can actually do a rebuild. I'll just do that real quick just to kind of show you. And it'll go through and regenerate everything. This is a little bit more intensive if, like I said, if it gets confused. Sometimes, 9 times out of 10, the make will work. Other times you have to regenerate. I do a make-j just so I spawn it. Now everything's already made, it knows it, so it's not going to bother rebuild. So that's basically how you link an algorithm into the W2 algs and MRMS system using the RAPIO. And as you use that, I'll probably do another video maybe where I actually show running a RAPIO algorithm and show you maybe some of the options on this. It's a little bit different. There's every experimentation that I've ever thought of doing in Woodsy that I wasn't able to do because of the restriction of the code, I've pretty much put into RAPIO. So the algorithms are much more advanced in their options and what you have the capability of doing. So that'll probably be a video in its own right. So let's just end it then. So the last thing I'll say is where to get it. And it's at github.com, RE2me, RAPIO Builder. That's the builder package. And then if you just want the actual source code, the RAPIO directly, just look at it. I mean, you can do it that way. It gets auto checked out by the builder. You can go to the RAPIO one, and that should get you going. So that's it. Thanks for watching.